All right, we've covered global headline news, sports, and health so far on our inaugural episode of A4N, the Artificial Neural Network News Network. And now we have a short final segment. It's from the classifieds section of the news program. And this is about hiring smarter than the market when you're doing a hiring. So classified section, it used to be a section of the newspaper, probably not often on an actual radio program, but who knows, where people could look for jobs or jobs could be posted. And so I read this piece, which we'll share with all of the listeners. It's called How to Hire Smarter Than the Market, a toy model. It's by Eric Bernhardson, who has released a lot of thoughtful data science, data-driven thinking over the years. In this one, he used simulated data and some simple models that he composed on those simulated data to draw what in the end ended up being some relatively straightforward conclusions. So essentially what he did was he said, if you want to hire the most capable people, for example, the software developers who are technically the best software developers for your role, then consider ignoring attributes that the rest of the market values. So consider ignoring attributes that the rest of the market values and that you don't. So he listed some examples of those kinds of things. So candidates from non-fancy schools, candidates who didn't go to school at all and are self-taught or have some non-traditional path into the field, candidates who didn't get a CS degree, a computer science degree, candidates who never worked at any well-respected company, candidates who are low confidence, so they might interview poorly, candidates that could experience discrimination for other reasons like being from underrepresented groups or somehow not fitting in with some stereotype of what a software engineer should look like, candidates who need visa sponsorships, candidates who don't have your exact tech stack but could be strong generalists, and candidates who left the workforce for a while to take care of family, for example. So
I just want to point out that I am all of those things.
That's how we know you're a great data scientist.
Rest my case.
So kind of a straightforward point there. And maybe I'm just going to go right into my last and final point. We can talk about all of those points in the context of this final article, which is it's an interview on Floyd Hub. So Floyd Hub is a tool that allows you to use Jupyter notebooks for fairly effortlessly building models that can be deployed on really high-octane servers. And so they talked with a former intern of theirs named Emil Wallner. And Emil Wallner, he comes from such a non-traditional background. So he has specific recommendations for how you could position yourself as an excellent AI researcher talent, despite coming from a non-traditional background. So he talks about a specific path that you could follow. So he specifically recommends this fast.ai course, spending 3 months on that, then spending 3 to 12 months doing personal projects, reproducing papers, doing consulting, and then flashcarding the deep learning book for 4 to 6 months. So this is Ian Goodfellow, Aaron Corville, and Yoshua Bengio's book, Deep Learning, published by MIT Press. It's a kind of canonical book in the field, and he recommends spending 4 to 6 months. I guess flashcarding would mean writing the key points on flashcards and then quizzing yourself, and then doing the same thing on approximately 100 papers in a niche for 2 months, so flashcarding on those, and then publishing your first paper, he suggests. I mean, that's going to be, I think, well, you'd have to be very focused to get that done. I guess you wouldn't have a job to get from nothing to within a few months publishing your first paper. But I like his ideas in general. I recommend reading the blog post in its entirety if you're looking to become some kind of machine learning researcher. There's lots of great tips in there. He does mention Kaggle competitions as one way to get some experience. And then the final point is really ties in with the first piece that I was talking about from Eric Bernhardson, which is this idea that if you want to attract self-taught AI talent, then try hiring based on portfolio as opposed to based on resume. Have 100% transparent requirements, don't require cover or recommendation letters, nor theory questions, offer on-the-job training, and facilitate part-time PhDs and transitions into research roles. So I don't know if people just have general thoughts on so for people listening who are maybe interested in breaking into machine learning, if we think these tips are useful.
I think that if you were to follow everything that he said, you'd be pretty well set up for a job. I think that it would be hard to not get hired in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
I also think maybe that's a lot of what he said is a little overkill. It depends on the job you want, I suppose.
Right.
And who you are, you know.
Perhaps some people are more dedicated than others. As someone who I guess I consider myself a self-taught AI
You are for sure.
person,
Yeah.
I didn't do a lot of the things that he said. I mean, to be fair, Goodfellow's book wasn't really out when I was doing it, but even if it was, I doubt I was going to spend 4 to 6 months flashcarding the entire book.
Right.
So yeah, I think that there's definitely a middle ground between what he said and what is absolutely necessary, minimum viable product or whatever it is. But I guess it also becomes a function of the kind of job you're looking for. If you want to go work for, Google DeepMind, maybe you do need to step your game up.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, and there's also, you have some advantages. You do have some of the things. Your resume is pretty good too. You have a PhD and that kind of thing. So it's, in a quantitative discipline, and so I guess he could be making the point that if you come from a non-traditional background, you might need to fight a little bit more. And I think, he was specifically, I think he ended up now being hired. He is working as a AI researcher at Google, which is a particularly, we're not even talking about applications. We're talking about more or less, pure AI research makes much sense to kind of define, but that kind of idea of being a researcher and publishing papers. And so,
what was his background? Did he go to college? Did he have a degree of any kind?
I can't remember all the details now, but he had this long and storied journey. It involved work all over the world in various kinds of fields. I can't remember if he had actually gone to and done any.
I guess it's safe to say he doesn't have a PhD in statistics.
For sure.
One of my thoughts when I read the Eric Bernhardson's article, great article, and I think, as you said, it kind of was pretty in line with a lot of our intuitive sense of the arbitrary nature sometimes of some of the hard requirements in job postings. But if we look at the entire list, it seems to, in many ways, call into question almost all of the factors that are traditionally used to discriminate between quality of candidates. And not that I have a problem with that at all, but how, in light of all of these, do you actually do that? Like, how do you actually tell the difference between someone who didn't go to a non-fancy school, didn't go to school at all, doesn't have a CS degree, never worked for a well-respected company, who interviews poorly and is good, from someone who has all those traits and isn't great?
I guess that's actually, so that's, I feel like Emil Vollner in his piece kind of answered some of those questions. So it's this idea that if your interview process involves, instead of evaluating like essentially all of those things that he listed, maybe not all of them, but the vast majority of them are things that you can tell from somebody's resume. Maybe all of them you can. And so the idea here is going from not having a resume-based application process, but saying, okay, we're going to do this based on your portfolio. Now, that said, I think you can still use a resume to showcase your portfolio work. And so maybe that's kind of the middle ground, because it's, the reality is you can't go out and talk or evaluate the portfolio of every single applicant that comes to you. Having a piece of paper that summarizes what you're like is critical. But, so if somebody can say, even if their whole resume was just a portfolio and then it links to their GitHub profile, or maybe something that would be, if this just came to me off the top of my head, but if you want to demonstrate that you're a great candidate for some kind of data science or data engineering role, you could build some simple web app that maybe somebody can upload something into, and it kind of works in real time. I mean, that would be a really good demonstration of your quality that I think would be more important. If you were looking for someone for a junior level role and they built a web app that is able to, that you can draw a handwritten digit and then it classifies that digit, that seems pretty cool if they built that from scratch.
Yeah.
I think also we're maybe looking at it from Emil's perspective a little too much. Hiring is a two-way street, and a big problem in hiring, as we all know, is finding quality candidates is difficult.
Right.
And then once you find those quality candidates, sometimes it's actually difficult to even hire them because there are other companies that are also trying to hire them. And so he draws the distinction, this Eric gentleman, in his article about the kinds of people that you want to hire, and then the key people that will even bother coming in for an interview with you because
Right.
maybe your company isn't prestigious enough or you aren't offering enough pay. And so he talks about how when you put those two parameters on, one you're sort of cutting things off at the bottom, and anything below this line is not good enough for us. On the other side, anything above a certain line is not, you're not good enough for them.
Right.
And so there's a narrower band of people that you have access to, and what he's saying is that within those limitations, you might not be able to get the kinds of people you want who have computer science degrees and also have 5 years experience and so on and so forth. So perhaps within that space, it's more useful to look for people with non-traditional backgrounds, and you might find more of what you're looking for in other realms.
Yeah, that's exactly what his simulated data and his models suggest. That's a great way to summarize it. So it's been wonderful having you listening to our first inaugural episode of A4N, the Artificial Neural Network News Network. We talked about real-time facial recognition and the kind of privacy-related issues related to that and the technology behind it. We talked about data science competitions and how those can be cheated on and have been now prominently. We talked about deep learning algorithms that are markedly changing the way that protein folding is being done, so some health research. And then now we've wrapped things up with a discussion of artificial intelligence careers and how you might break into them, or non-traditional approaches to getting into them. So I think if we go around and just everyone gets the opportunity to say their name, for viewers listening at home, you'll be able to, if you're not watching our YouTube video version and you're just listening to this, you'll now be able to piece together kind of who everyone was. So
over on this side, which is the right side, left. Maybe we shouldn't use
side.
Over on the correct side.
Of
my name is
your
Grant.
ears. Sorry, I spoke over
You did. My name is Grant.
And I'm Vince. And I'm Andrew.
And I'm Jon Krohn, and I kind of introduced the segments here today. I hope you enjoyed this very much. We have Twitter handles that we can provide to you. I'm Jon Krohn Learns on Twitter.
Mine is Grant BEY.
And it seems like that might be the end of our Twitter handles.
Yeah, I don't do that.
And Vince shaking his head as well. You can head to my website, jonkrohn.com, jonkrohn.com. I have an email newsletter that you can sign up for. We'll make sure that you get updated on any new episodes of A4N. And you're also welcome to add us on LinkedIn. Just mention that you were a listener on A4N, and we will be, I will be, at least, I'm not going to speak for everyone else, happy to accept your invitation. Many thanks to Untapt, for whom all of us work, for bringing us together and enabling us to do something like this. And also to our producers, Songvin and Maria, and also to whoever makes the theme song for this show in the future. That could be you, listener, or it could be Vince.
We're hoping it's you, listener.
Yeah, save us from Vince's theme song. It can be you. Please do it. All right. See you next time, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.